What happens when an arrogant corporate CEO sarcastically offers a date to a quiet single father if he can repair a multi-million-dollar automated production line that her elite engineering team could not fix in 2 days? Marcus Vance did not laugh or blush. Standing in his scuffed boots beside his young daughter, the humble technician dropped his heavy steel toolbox onto the concrete floor with a deafening thud and went to work. Tonight, 20 minutes of practical genius shatters an executive team's arrogance, proving that real authority is never found in expensive suits, but in unyielding skill and heart. Before we step onto the high-tech floor of Vanguard Automation, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, tap the notification bell, and drop a comment below letting us know where in the world you are watching from today. Your constant support helps us share grounded, powerful stories about working-class quiet dignity, master craftsmanship, and the strength found in genuine devotion. Now let us begin. The clear, dry autumn afternoon sun streamed through the soaring glass panels of Vanguard Logistics and Robotics flagship facility in Columbus, Ohio. Outside, the sky was an unbroken canopy of crisp, brilliant sapphire. Inside the 300,000-square-foot automated distribution hub, the atmosphere was thick with high-stakes panic. Mounted high above the polished concrete floor, red LED strobe lights flashed in silent, rhythmic warning. Critical system failure. Line 4 automated packaging matrix shut down. Line 4 was the crown jewel of Vanguard's $50 million facility. A high-speed, robotic sorting and packaging matrix capable of processing 40,000 units per hour. But for the past 48 hours, the massive system had been dead in the water. Every time the primary conveyor reached 98% operational capacity, a mysterious, phantom signal locked the main programmable logic controller, PLC bus, shutting down 28 robotic arms simultaneously and threatening a $10 million penalty clause with Vanguard's lead international client. Standing near the primary control console was 36-year-old Eleanor Reed, the founder and CEO of Vanguard Logistics. Eleanor was a woman accustomed to absolute control. She wore a tailored charcoal wool blazer, an ivory silk blouse, and dark trousers. Her dark hair was pinned back in a flawless knot, framing a sharp, striking face with perceptive hazel eyes currently clouded with intense exhaustion and frustration. Eleanor had built Vanguard from a 3-person logistics office into an industry giant through sheer willpower, but right now, her multi-million-dollar empire was being crippled by a machine that refused to run. Surrounding the master console were 4 senior systems engineers wearing pristine white lab coats, led by Dr. Richard Hayes, the 39-year-old chief technology officer. Hayes held a master's degree from MIT and a doctorate in robotics, his posture carrying an arrogant, untouchable elitism that had alienated half the facility's floor staff. Dr. Hayes, I am staring at a 48-hour outage, Eleanor stated, her voice a calm, controlled alto that carried a terrifying edge of quiet command. We have replaced the main fiber optic bus cables, swapped the central processing modules, and re-flashed the firmware 3 times. Why is Line 4 still shutting down? Hayes wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, adjusting his designer spectacles nervously. Eleanor, Ms. Reed. As I have explained, this is an unprecedented multi-variable sensor anomaly. The diagnostic telemetry indicates an intermittent, non-reproducible bus arbitration error across the secondary CAN bus nodes. My team has been working continuously for 2 days. The system architecture requires a full software re-architecture from our European vendor, which will take 5 business days. 5 days will cost us $12 million and our primary international contract. Richard, Eleanor countered, her hazel eyes flashing like cold steel. I don't need academic excuses. I need this line running by 5 o'clock. At that precise moment, the heavy double steel doors of the main facility intake bay clicked open. Walking across the polished concrete floor toward the glowing red control console was 34-year-old Marcus Vance. Marcus was a broad-shouldered man built like a concrete foundation. He wore dark denim work pants, scuffed steel-toed leather boots showing signs of hard labor, and a faded heavy navy canvas work shirt with Vance Independent Repair embroidered in worn white thread over his left chest pocket. Short dark hair silvered neatly at the temples framed a square, sun-weathered jawline and calm, observant steel-gray eyes. In his right hand, he carried a heavy, battered 50-pound steel toolbox covered in grease stains and manufacturer decals. Walking beside him, holding his left hand tightly, was his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Lily wore a bright yellow cardigan over denim overalls, holding a small plush rabbit named Barnaby, her wide brown eyes marveling at the giant robotic arms hanging motionless from the ceiling. Marcus was an independent industrial electrician and freelance automation troubleshooter. He had been called 20 minutes earlier by Vanguard's veteran facility maintenance manager, who knew that when corporate engineers failed, Marcus Vance was the only man in the state who truly understood how practical machines breathed. Dr. Richard Hayes turned his head, taking in Marcus's faded canvas shirt, scuffed leather boots, and the quiet 6-year-old girl standing beside him. A sneering, patronizing smirk spread across Hayes's face. "Is this a joke?" Hayes chuckled, gesturing dismissively toward Marcus. "Frank, did you actually call a local grease monkey in work boots to fix a multi-variable PLC bus arbitration fault on a $50 million robotic matrix?" The 3 junior engineers laughed nervously, taking their cue from their CTO. Marcus did not answer immediately. He stopped 10 feet from the master control console, setting his heavy steel toolbox down with a soft, careful touch so as not to startle Lily. His steel-gray eyes scanned Hayes, then the junior engineers, and finally settled on Eleanor Reed with an immovable, dignified stillness. "Good afternoon, ma'am," Marcus said. His voice was a low, grounded baritone, smooth, calm, and entirely devoid of posture or fear. "Frank called me. He said your main packaging loop is dropping its bus signal at high velocity." Eleanor looked at Marcus. In her corporate world of high-salaried executives, custom suits, and academic credentials, Marcus Vance looked entirely alien. Yet, despite his grease-stained knuckles and scuffed boots, there was zero hesitation in his posture. He stood tall, anchored by an unpretentious confidence that made Hayes's arrogant smirking look cheap and superficial. However, Eleanor was physically, mentally, and emotionally spent. 48 hours of corporate pressure, impending breach of contract penalties, and her CTO's endless excuses had worn her patience thin. She looked at Marcus's scuffed boots, then at his simple navy shirt, and let out a long, dry, cynical sigh. "Mr. Vance," Eleanor said, her voice laced with a sharp, sarcastic edge that she immediately regretted. "My senior engineering team, holding multiple doctorates in robotics and systems architecture, has spent 2 continuous days analyzing this diagnostic log without success. If you can actually fix what my engineers couldn't in the next 30 minutes, I will personally take you out on a date anywhere in this city." The 3 junior engineers burst into loud, condescending laughter. Hayes shook his head, folding his arms. "Careful, Eleanor. You might end up eating hot dogs at a truck stop." Marcus did not blush. He did not smirk. He did not offer a quick, clever comeback or display anger. He looked straight into Eleanor's hazel eyes with a laser-like clarity that instantly cut through the room's artificial noise. Without saying a word, Marcus reached down with his right hand, grabbed the heavy steel handle of his 50-pound toolbox, lifted it 2 feet into the air, and dropped it flat onto the polished concrete floor. Clang thud. The deafening, metallic thunder echoed like a cannon shot through the quiet 300,000-square-foot facility. The sharp vibration rattled the metal railings and instantly shocked the entire room into absolute, dead silence. The junior engineers jumped back in surprise. Dr. Hayes blinked, his arrogant smile freezing on his face. Marcus leaned down slightly, gently patting his daughter's shoulder. "Lily, sweet pea, go sit over near Frank's desk. Draw a picture of the blue robot for me." "Okay, Dad," Lily whispered softly, walking over to the nearby maintenance desk with her sketchbook and plush rabbit. Marcus straightened his broad shoulders, pulled a dark red shop rag from his rear pocket, and looked directly into Eleanor's eyes with absolute, razor-thin focus. "Keep your date, Ms. Reed," Marcus said, his low baritone voice cutting through the quiet facility like iron. "I am not here for a social game, and I am not interested in your executive bets. I charge $85 an hour for my labor. I suggest your engineers stand back and let a professional work." Eleanor felt her blood run cold. In 10 years of corporate leadership, no human being had ever addressed her with such raw, unadulterated dignity. She stood paralyzed, her mouth opening slightly, her analytical mind completely captivated by the humble technician standing before her. Marcus didn't wait for permission. He unlatched the heavy steel clasps of his toolbox, pulling out a digital fluke oscilloscope, a specialized signal analyzer, an insulated precision screwdriver set, and a small LED work flashlight. He walked straight past Dr. Hayes and the junior engineers, ignoring their lab coats completely, and stepped up to the primary servo bay beneath line 4. "Mr. Vance," Dr. Hayes barked, stepping forward angrily. "You cannot touch that main bus terminal without reviewing the diagnostic software logs on my laptop. We have already verified the code." "Your code is fine, Doctor," Marcus interrupted calmly without looking back, his fingers moving with fluid, mechanical efficiency as he unbolted the steel protective panel covering the secondary drive shaft. "Software doesn't fail only at 98% velocity. Physical systems do." Marcus shined his LED flashlight deep into the drive shaft housing. He didn't look at the high-end digital screens. He observed the physical machine. He listened to the cooling fan pitch, checked the thermal expansion lines along the steel mounting rails, and attached the clips of his digital oscilloscope directly to the ground wire of the primary optical encoder. Eleanor walked over slowly, standing 3 feet behind him, watching his hands. His fingers were large and calloused, but they moved over delicate microcircuits with the breathtaking precision of a master surgeon. "What are you looking for, Mr. Vance?" Eleanor asked softly, her tone completely stripped of her former executive sarcasm. "Harmonic resonance," Marcus replied smoothly, his voice calm and steady as he adjusted the frequency dial on his oscilloscope. "Your engineers are looking for a digital ghost in the software because that's what their laptops tell them to look for. But they missed the mechanical physics." Dr. Hayes scoffed, stepping closer. "Mechanical physics? That is a state-of-the-art optical encoder with triple shielded cable protection. And your installation team used a standard steel mounting washer on the secondary drive housing instead of a non-conductive neoprene isolation spacer," Marcus noted flatly, pointing an insulated probe toward a tiny, nickel-sized washer beneath the main servo motor. Hayes blinked, frowning. "A washer? What does a washer have to do with a CN bus arbitration lockup?" Marcus turned his head slowly, looking straight into Hayes's eyes. "When this line reaches 98% velocity," Marcus explained clearly, his baritone voice carrying total technical authority, "the high-speed rotation of the main drive motor creates a 120 Hz harmonic mechanical vibration. Because that steel washer lacks an isolation dampener, that micro-vibration transfers directly into the optical encoder's metal housing. The vibration creates a minute piezoelectric voltage spike across the ground shield, tricking your PLC computer into reading a false short circuit and shutting down the bus for safety." The 4 senior engineers stood completely motionless. Dr. Hayes went deathly pale. His mouth opened, but 0 words came out. He stared at the tiny steel washer, his analytical mind. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out a 50-cent non-conductive neoprene isolation washer from his small plastic parts organizer, unbolted the drive housing, swapped the steel washer, re-torqued the mounting bolt to precisely 14 foot-pounds using a hand torque wrench, and re-secured the panel. He stood up, wiped his hands on his red shop rag, walked to the main control console, and pressed the master system reset button. The green overhead lights illuminated instantly. Hum. The massive, 30-ton automated matrix surged to life. The primary conveyor belt accelerated smoothly, reaching 50%, 70%, 90%, and locked solidly at 100% maximum operational velocity. 28 robotic arms moved in flawless, whisper-quiet, perfect synchronization, sorting and packaging 1,200 boxes per minute without a single error light. The digital timer on the facility wall showed that exactly 19 minutes and 40 seconds had elapsed since Marcus dropped his toolbox. The entire 300,000 square foot facility erupted into spontaneous cheers from the floor operators and warehouse staff. Frank, the maintenance manager, slapped his thigh in pure triumph, while the junior engineers looked at the floor in profound, overwhelming humiliation. Dr. Richard Hayes stood paralyzed, staring at the flawless, whispering robotic line, his expensive credentials and academic arrogance completely dismantled by a 50-cent neoprene washer and 20 minutes of practical skill. Eleanor Reed stood motionless beside the control console. Her hazel eyes were wide as she watched Line 4 process thousands of packages flawlessly, saving her firm $12 million and preserving her company's reputation. She turned slowly to look at Marcus. Marcus wasn't gloating. He wasn't smiling at Hayes, nor was he boasting to the floor crew. He was sitting calmly on a wooden crate beside his 6-year-old daughter, gently taking a juice box from his pocket, opening it, and handing it to Lily alongside her plush rabbit. "Did you fix the big blue robot, Dad?" Lily asked sweetly, taking a sip. "Fixed it, sweet pea." Marcus smiled gently, his weathered face softening into pure, radiant tenderness as he wiped a smudge of dust from her cheek. Eleanor felt a sudden, sharp tightness in her throat, a wave of deep, unadulterated respect and profound humility washing over her. She realized that while she had spent 2 days surrounded by highly paid executives who offered excuses, the humble man standing before her in scuffed boots possessed a mind of absolute genius and a heart of pure devotion. Eleanor walked over to Frank, the maintenance manager, keeping her voice low. "Frank, who is Marcus Vance?" Frank looked at Marcus with deep, unshakable respect. Marcus used to be the Chief Systems Reliability Evaluator for the Midwest Aerospace Logistics Command, Ms. Reed. He managed nuclear-grade automation systems and held a $300,000 annual salary. Eleanor's breath hitched in her throat. Why is he working as an independent repair technician? For years ago, Frank explained quietly, his wife Hannah passed away after a quiet battle with cancer. Marcus realized that working 80 hours a week in executive corporate towers meant missing his little girl growing up alone. So he resigned his chief evaluator position, bought a small house on 2 acres outside the city, and opened an independent repair shop so he could be home every afternoon at 4 o'clock to cook dinner for Lily. Frank looked straight into Eleanor's eyes. "He doesn't care about corporate titles, Ms. Reed. He cares about his daughter, honest work, and keeping his word." The words echoed through Eleanor's soul like a physical bell chime. For 10 years, Eleanor had believed that executive power, high net worth, and relentless ambition were the only ways to earn respect and maintain control in a hostile corporate world. Yet sitting before her was a man who had held the pinnacle of professional prestige, and had willingly laid it down to live a simple, honest life built on pure love, integrity, and quiet devotion. Eleanor walked across the concrete floor, stopping 2 feet in front of Marcus. Marcus stood up smoothly, picking up his heavy steel toolbox and slinging his duffel bag over his shoulder. "Line 4 is stable, Ms. Reed," Marcus said flatly, pulling out a small invoice notepad. "Labor time, 20 minutes. Minimum service call fee is $85. You can mail the check to my shop address or pay through Frank's portal." Eleanor looked at the paper invoice, then up into his clear steel gray eyes. "Mr. Vance," Eleanor said, her voice soft, humble, and completely stripped of her former corporate distance. "I owe you an apology, a profound, sincere apology." Marcus paused, looking at her quietly. "I was arrogant," Eleanor confessed honestly, tears of genuine regret shimmering in her hazel eyes. "I judged you by your boots, your shirt, and your toolbox. I made a sarcastic, disrespectful joke about a date because I was exhausted and insecure, and you responded by saving my company." She stepped closer, looking at little Lily, who offered her a polite, shy smile. "I offered a date, Mr. Vance," Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly with brave vulnerability. "And while I know you rejected my sarcastic joke, I would be deeply honored if you would allow me to buy you and your daughter dinner tonight. Not as an executive bet, but as a woman who wants to learn from a man of true integrity." Marcus looked into her hazel eyes. He saw no corporate posturing, zero condescension, and zero pretense. He saw a brilliant, hard-working woman who had realized her mistake and possessed the courage to stand humble before him. Marcus turned his head, looking down at Lily. "What do you think, Lily? Are you hungry for dinner?" Lily looked at Eleanor's elegant suit, then at her warm, sincere smile. "Can we get pancakes with chocolate chips?" Marcus offered a slow, genuine smile. A smile that softened his weathered jawline and warmed his gray eyes. Pancakes it is. At 6:30 p.m., under a clear, dry autumn evening sky, Eleanor Reed's dark luxury sedan pulled up to the parking lot of the Red Barn Diner, a quiet, rustic restaurant on the outskirts of the city. Inside the cozy wooden booth, illuminated by warm amber lamps, the multi-million-dollar CEO, the independent technician, and the 6-year-old girl sat together. For the next 2 hours, they didn't discuss corporate acquisitions, quarterly stock margins, or executive politics. They spoke about simple, honest things. Marcus's woodworking projects in his backyard, Lily's school art drawings, and Eleanor's childhood growing up in a small farming town before entering corporate business. Eleanor listened in motionless, captivated focus as Marcus spoke about his daughter, his eyes glowing with unconditional love whenever he mentioned her name. "Why did you drop your toolbox so loud on the concrete floor, Marcus?" Eleanor asked softly, holding her warm mug of tea. Marcus grinned faintly, his calloused hand gently adjusting Lily's napkin. "Because when people spend all their time talking in loud, expensive suits, sometimes you have to remind them that the ground beneath their feet is made of heavy steel and hard work." Eleanor let out a bright, clear laugh. A genuine, unscripted laugh that she hadn't felt in 10 long years. "You reminded me of who I used to be, Marcus," Eleanor admitted softly, her hazel eyes locking onto his. "Before I got lost in corporate spreadsheets." "It's never too late to reset the system, Eleanor," Marcus replied gently. "You just need the right isolation washer." 6 months later, a clear, brilliant spring sun broke over the rolling hills of Ohio, painting the countryside in vibrant shades of emerald and gold. Situated on a sunlit 2-acre parcel near the timberline stood Vance and Reed Reliability Systems, a new independent industrial consulting firm founded jointly by Marcus Vance and Eleanor Reed. Following the event at Line 4, Eleanor had restructured Vanguard Logistics, firing Dr. Richard Hayes for official negligence and safety protocol falsification, while establishing a new employee advocacy board that guaranteed fair wages and technical training for all working-class maintenance staff. She had resigned her 42nd floor corporate CEO position, taking a 60% pay cut to partner with Marcus in building an independent firm that specialized in sustainable, human-centered industrial automation. Over 40 guests, facility technicians, local shop owners, and friends had gathered on the sunlit lawn behind Marcus's rustic home for an afternoon barbecue celebration. Standing on the wide cedar porch of the house, dressed in a clean dark blue flannel shirt and jeans, was Marcus Vance. Beside him stood Eleanor, wearing a soft cream sundress, her dark hair flowing naturally in the warm spring breeze. On her left hand, a simple platinum ring inlaid with a thin band of hand-carved cedar would caught the afternoon sunlight. They had been married 2 weeks prior in a quiet ceremony under the giant oak trees on the property. Running across the green lawn, holding a bright red kite dancing against the blue sky, was 7-year-old Lily, her joyful laughter echoing across the valley. The new regional hospital automation audit contract just cleared. Eleanor smiled, resting her head comfortably against Marcus's broad shoulder. "Looks like my wife is running the business again," Marcus teased gently, kissing the top of her head. Eleanor looked up into his clear steel gray eyes, her face radiant with peace, joy, and unconditional love. "Do you remember what I said to you on the facility floor 6 months ago, Marcus?" Eleanor asked softly. Marcus grinned, his calloused hand squeezing hers tight. "You said you'd take me on a date if I fixed what your engineers couldn't." Eleanor let out a bright, happy laugh, leaning up to kiss his cheek under the open sky. "And you fixed my whole life," Eleanor whispered. They stood together in the sunlit doorway, watching their daughter play in the grass, holding each other tight. A home built to last forever on truth, courage, and unbroken love. True authority is never measured by the cost of a suit, the size of a corporate office, or the academic degrees on a wall. It is forged through the quiet integrity of your skill, the courage to stand humble, and the devotion to protect what actually matters in life. Marcus Vance showed an entire corporate facility that the greatest master is not the one who commands from the highest tower, but the one who leads with a humble, devoted heart. Thank you so much for joining us for this deeply moving story today. If Marcus and Eleanor's journey touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an uplifting story. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever seen a quiet, humble person completely dismantle an arrogant authority figure through sheer skill and dignity? Take care of yourselves, stay true to your heart, and we will see you in the next story.